Hi, this is Houston and welcome to 2D Design Photoshop, the fourth class. And in this class, we are going to talk about artboards, how to work with artboards, how to create and put content inside artboards. And then we are going to talk about grids, guides, and rulers. And after that, we are going to talk about typography and some possibilities that Photoshop have to work with typographies. And then we are going to talk briefly about slices, which is a very interesting feature of Photoshop to divide images into smaller pieces. After that, we are going to talk about how to export images and slices, and I have a challenge for you. And this challenge, I'm going to explain what exactly I intend, what I expect, and I'm going to set up a Photoshop file or show you how to do this thing before you start doing your assignment. Okay, so without further ado, let's do this. So here we are inside Photoshop, and I would like to show you how to work with artboards. And to show you that, I would like to explain first of all what artboards are and how this thing is important. Okay. To do that, I'm going to click here, new file, and right away, if you go to, for example, photo, print, or art and illustration, you will notice that you can create pretty much whatever you want. And when you are using print, you have all the settings here. And let's jump into web, for example, or mobile. Of course, it's not clear the difference between those things yet. But first of all, some things here are quite different. You can notice, for example, that the resolution for web and mobile and also film and video, they are pretty much the same. Okay, we don't have to work with the same resolution that we have when we work with printed documents. Okay, this is one thing. The second thing is if you go to web, mobile, you will notice that we have this option here called Artboards. Checked. Okay, and this, by the way, doesn't change a lot. Photoshop is not going to radically change. Basically, the core idea behind this thing is to give you a possibility to work with literally different layouts inside the same file. And if you think about Illustrator, inside Illustrator you have Artboards. And here in Photoshop, now we have the same concept, artboards. So you can literally have, for example, a design created for a website, and you can have a artboard with the web version of this website. And you can have, like inside the same Photoshop file, a new artboard with the mobile version of this website, or even a iPad version of this website. So this is pretty common because, for example, as you can see, you can have inside the same file multiple layouts, and you can share content between those files. And you can pretty much do a lot of things inside the same Photoshop file, and this is pretty convenient because you can export the artboards or elements from the artboards afterwards. So this is, again, a very powerful and flexible way of working in Photoshop, and it's a new way of doing things. So first of all, I would like to create like web large. And I'm going to I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to leave the artboard selected, and I'm going to hit create. When you do that, Photoshop is going to create the file, of course, and he is going to create inside your layer panels. Let me double click here and here just to close those options. And here on your layers panel, you see that you have the artboard and you have the layer, and you can have as many layers as you want inside the same artboard. Okay, eventually if you want to work with creating more artboards, you can do so, because if you select the artboard, which by the way reminds me folders, right? You can literally move this guy to the side and create a new one. So if you want to create new artboards, by the way, there is a tool for doing that. If you go to your move tool, click and hold, you will see here artboard tool. Okay, and if you select this guy, you will notice that right away we have like those arrows here. Not arrows, pluses, you know, it's like plus buttons. If you click here, you're going to create like on the side a copy of this layout. So you have the same size, the same settings. And by the way, if you want to change anything, you just have to select the artboard and you just have to go to your properties panel. Here you can find the size, the background color of the artboard, which by the way always have by default a color, but you can give transparency if you want. Okay, and this has nothing to do with the transparency of the object inside. Okay, so for example, you can draw something here, and this thing that you can draw is going to have like a content, for example, and that is of course no transparency because you are filling this guy with something, right? And but at the same time, you can go to the artboard and you can tweak the transparency if you want white or black or whatever. And this is a very interesting way. Oh, by the way, you can have other colors if you want. Okay, let's suppose that you are creating something very specific, and when you export, Photoshop is going to respect. If you export the entire artboard, Photoshop is going to respect the color of the background that you gave. Okay, so using this artboard tool, you can create new artboards, and if you want, you can even change the preset, because when you go here to the top, you will see set artboard to preset. You can work, for example, with literally a different layout here. So for example, this one is Android, and this one can be like web small. You can create literally different sizes, and you can have like different layouts inside the same project. If you want to add a new one, you just have to go to your artboard tool, click here, and this one would be, I don't know, the iPhone version of this guy. So you can design pretty much whatever you want. And if you think that the orientation is not right, you can work with the orientation, changing the values here. This is one thing. And also, if you want, you can work with alignments, and you can work with distribution of different artboards to have like a better alignment of the artboard. So for example, I selected the artboards and I hit this button here. You can align to left edges, and you can have like everything on top of each other. But just out of the curiosity, okay, you cannot have artboards inside artboards. Photoshop will not allow you to have that. You cannot have nested artboards, okay? But inside a artboard, you can create groups. For example, if you select a bunch of objects, you can drag to the folder here, and you can create a group, and you can have a group, okay? So it's pretty much a new way to work. And just to be clear how this thing works, let me show you a finished work. If you go to new file here in web or mobile, you have a bunch of presets that you can try to see, and I downloaded this guy here, both social media set. It's already on my computer. You just have to click and then open. Those are free, by the way. And here I have a bunch of artboards. They are all separated. If you double click, you can go close to this guy. And by the way, they have names, as you can see here on the top. They all have names, okay? And the way to change names is super simple. So for example, sale 1, you can go here to the beginning, just double click on the name of the layer, and then super sale 1. So this is pretty much the way to rename artboards. And another thing about artboards, if you go inside, let me make this thing a little bit bigger. If you go to the options on the layer panel, I already showed you that, but I like to do that because I resetted my Photoshop. So if you click here on this guy and go to the panel options, you can choose to work with a bigger size and layer bounds. If you do that, you will see exactly the content of the layer and pretty big. Okay, this is better to visualize things. If you think this is way too big, you can work with something I like, which is this one, and then click OK. And they are kind of easier to work, I would say. And inside the artboard, this one, we have the texts, and you can pretty much do the same things you do inside any Photoshop file. You can change the texts, you can create new content, and you can bring things inside. Okay, now I'm going to create a file just to bring something inside. Okay, just to show you some very important things about creating content inside artboards. So let's close this guy, let's go to File, New, and in this case I would like to create something for web, let's suppose, and I always start with this guy or something kind of close to the size I would like to work. So for example, I would like to work with something with the same width and height. In this case, let's suppose that I want to create something for Instagram, like a square post for Instagram. I just have to put the width and height the same values, and I can use the rest of the presets. I don't have to change anything else. Okay, I just change it the size, and I have the same resolution, I have the color modes, I have the backgrounds, and I have, of course, artboards selected, and I have to hit create. After that, Photoshop is going to create, is going to put this empty layer. This is an empty layer, and my artboard is white, because if you go again to artboard, you will see that I'm using the color of this artboard as white. And the way to work with text inside this guy, we are going to talk about text, of course, but just so you know, the way to work with text is select your horizontal text, just click inside, and you can type pretty much you want. And when you let me see, Photoshop is oh, okay, it's probably because I don't have this specific font, so you have to select one that is available on your computer. So for example, let's go to the let's select one I like here. I have okay, Roboto is a very versatile font family, and as you can see, there's a lot of settings that we can change. We are going to talk about text later on, but I'm just showing you how to deal with this thing. So if you want, for example, to create a photo, there's two ways to do that. So you can open up the photo and you can bring here. So for example, if I go to File, Open, and on your computer, and we have here, for example, downloads, and I have like two photos here. So let's take this one. And the last time we talked about bringing photos inside a Photoshop file, I showed you the way of clicking and dragging and bringing here and releasing. This is one way to do that. This is not the only way. If you want, you can use another approach. Okay, so for example, here in Photoshop, you have the possibility of using File, Place Embedded, and Place Linked. Okay, so for example, let's go to Place Embedded. If you could put a file like Place Embedded, this file comes to your Photoshop file. If you click OK, you will notice that this file have like a different icon, as you can see here. If you double click on this guy, Photoshop is going to say, okay, are you sure that you want to open up this guy? If you open up this guy, you have like the original photo here. Okay, what is going on is Photoshop brought this photo inside your file, and at the same time he put this photo inside a smart object. He's trying to protect this file. Okay, and this is super cool because you can do pretty much you want with this layer. Most of the features are available for smart objects. Okay, I usually work with photos and content from, for example, Illustrator. When I bring content from Illustrator, I always use smart objects because this is like a container and this is going to protect my content. So if I double click on this content, for example, something that I brought from Illustrator, Photoshop is going to open up this guy inside Illustrator, and this is a very cool feature. So keep that in mind. It's a very professional way to work. The problem is there is a small difference between those two. Okay, if you try to select this guy here, for example, okay, just for the sake of comparison, if you take this photo here, this is a photo that I brought like clicking and dragging, as you might remember. If you go to image adjustments, you have all the possibilities of using those guys here, but you also have most of those features if you go to your adjustment layers. Okay, if you go to your adjustment layers, you have let's go to layer adjustment layers. Yes, you have almost all the settings, but you do not have all the settings. Okay, so you have to pay attention to that because some settings, they require that you have pixels to be applied to be able to apply those effects. So for example, if you go to image adjustments, I'm selecting, by the way, the layer I brought, just clicking and dragging. There is something here called match color. This match color is super cool. You can use the colors of other photos or layers to kind of bring the colors from that photo to this photo. So for example, you have this beautiful sky with clouds, but you want something more dramatic, and you found another picture with another sky, very dramatic, and you want to transfer the colors from one photo to another one. You just have to go to this match color feature. And for example, I have this first photo here, which is Paxel's Jonathan. You just have to select the source. The source is going to be this one. Okay, this is the source, and as you can see right away, Photoshop tries to transfer the colors from that photo to this photo. If you go to fade and fade 100%, you see the original colors. If you go fade down a little bit, you see that Photoshop tries to transfer the colors from that photo to this one. This feature again require pixels to be able to work. Okay, you have to select a photo, like, you know, outside the smart object. If you try to select the smart object, so let's suppose that I want to do the opposite. I want to bring this guy and I want to capture the colors of this photo and apply to this photo. I cannot do that using smart objects. If I go to image adjustments, as you can see here, some features are just deactivated, so you cannot choose those features because this is the main limitation of working with smart object layers. On the other hand, if you open up the photo and if you go to the photo, you can go to image adjustments. By the way, I'm seeing the pixels. Okay, you can go to image adjustments, and then you can try to use the match color, and you can say to Photoshop, okay, what is the source? The source is this untitled here, because this is the file I created. This is the source. Which layer? Let me see. The layer is going to be probably this layer here, layer 1. So right away, I was able to transfer all the colors from this photo to this photo. As you can see, now I have all the photos. So you can neutralize and you can work a little bit better with the colors. And as you can see right away, if you check this guy here, this is before, this is after. Way, way, way better, right? So I'm just saying that there's ways to work with this workflow, and you don't have to be limited to that. So another thing that is not going to work here is some filters. So for example, if you try to apply the filters, you will see that some filters like vanishing point is not going to work. So this guy requires, again, pixels to work, okay? But pretty much all the features, most of the features, okay, majority of the features, they're going to work if you use this kind of thing. So let's try to create another artboard and try to put those photos on another place. So in this case, we can go to Artboard, and right away we can click and hold on the move tool and go to the Artboard 2 and click here. And now I have the second artboard with exactly the same size of the previous one. And I can take my photo here and notice what is going to happen when I start moving this guy. Move, 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 move. When I put my cursor outside, the photo is, oh yeah, now it's outside everything actually. Okay, it's outside everything. If I drop my mouse, you will notice that the photo is now inside the second artboard. So there's two ways to deal with that. So you can click and drag, like the photos here, okay? You can click and drag and work like folders, okay? Or you can literally click and drag the thing to the top of the other artboard, and Photoshop is going to organize things for you. But let's suppose that this is not something you want to do. So for example, this image here is huge. Okay, is really, really huge. And this image, when I brought using the file place embedded, this file was scaled up to this size. Okay, but if you want to see like the real size of the photo, you just have to activate Control T, which is the same of going to edit, free transform, Control plus T. Okay. And here you have how much this image is, bigger compared to the original size. So right now, this image here is being showed as like 20% of the original size. Okay, if you put like 100 here, the photo is going to be resized and it's going to be huge. Like this is the original size, by the way. This is the original size, okay? And another way to work with those guys, and I do this all the time, you just have to click inside, put your cursor here, you don't have to select anything, okay? Just put your cursor here, hold shift, and use your mouse wheel over this thing, okay? If you do that, you're going to resize on bigger increments, 10% every time. Okay, and if you want to see like real pixels, let's suppose that you want to work with things for web, for example. It's super important when we work for web to know exactly the actual size of the things, right? If you want to work with real size instead of percentage, you just have to right mouse button and go to pixels. Right mouse button, select pixels, okay? Photoshop right now, my Photoshop is a little bit crazy here. It's showing a bunch of things, but you will see on your Photoshop that you are going to see different unities of measure here. Not everything is pixels, okay? I guarantee that. So as you can see here, this is the size of the thing in pixels and pixels, as you can see, right? You just have to click OK and everything will be fine. Okay. Another very important thing, sometimes you try to move things and then the photo goes outside, and sometimes the photo don't want to move to another frame. When the photo is super huge like this, it's really hard to get that effect of moving from one artboard to another one. Okay. In that case, you can use the click and drag to reposition this guy on another artboard. And if you want to really lock this guy to this layer, or to this artboard, you can use this option here, which is prevent auto nesting. So you are going to prevent this photo to jump to this artboard. So this photo is going to be kind of locked to this artboard. Okay, so this is the basics of working with artboards. Okay, and now I would like to talk briefly about the last option. The last option is I showed you how to use place embedded. When we put this photo here like place embedded, as you saw, we created this smart object, and the photo is protected inside the smart object, which is a pretty cool way to work with external files. But what is the main difference between place embedded and place linked? We use place embedded when we work with smaller files. Okay, if you have like a photo and this photo is not huge, what I understand by huge is like 500 megabytes, 300 megabytes. If this photo is like really huge, it's better to use the option called place linked. Place linked is going to literally take this photo from the disk and is going to bring this photo to Photoshop. And as you can see, the icon is a little bit different than this guy here. This is a smart object. Let me unlock this thing. This is a smart object, and this is a linked file. Okay. If you try to edit this file, by the way, if you double click, you're going to open up this file. Okay. Even if you close your main file. So for example, I'm going to save this thing on my computer just as a demonstration. Okay. Test. I'm going to save. It's totally fine. Just click OK. And as you can see, I can delete this artboard because I just want to demonstrate this feature for you. And I have one file embedded. So this is embedded, and this is place. Okay. So again, file, embedded. Okay, embed, and file place. Okay, place embed and place link. The main difference is this file here is a external file. This file here is inside Photoshop. Okay, what I mean by that, if I take this file here and close this guy, let's suppose I'm closing this guy. Try to remember the specs of the photo. I did absolutely nothing with this photo. This is the original one. Okay, let me open up to prove that this is the original one. Okay, I'm opening the original one, and now I'm going to image adjustments and then desaturate, because I want to create a black and white version of this photo. Okay, and I'm going to save, and that's it. Okay, I'm saving this file. And I'm going to close this guy, and I'm going to open up my test file. Okay, now as you can see, there is a small warning here, okay, saying that okay, I have to update this guy. So if you right mouse button, you see my Photoshop is a little bit crazy right now, but if you double click on this guy, you will open up the original file. Okay, if you close this guy and go back to Photoshop, although Photoshop is showing the old version here, the new version is here. Okay, so if you go to Photoshop and you can click edit contents to open up this guy, or let's open up here. There's some options. You can embed the external file inside Photoshop. If you click here, Photoshop is going to bring that external file and is going to create a smart object. So exactly the same way we did here. So the main difference between both is work with small files, always embedding. Okay, if you want to work with bigger files, you can use place linked, and if you do that, this linked file is going to be external to this file here, and you can open up this file and you can try to work separately on this linked file. So for example, it's pretty normal when we have like several people working on the same project, and instead of embedding, you can just link the files, and then when people finish like the photo treatment and the effect and whatever, you just have to update here inside Photoshop and then bring the updated version that you brought the first time using the place linked. Okay, simple as that. So I think this is the basics about artboards. We are going to talk about artboards a little bit more. So for example, if I want to export artboards, and that is a very cool way to do that, but I'm going to talk about exporting things after we talk about the other things we have to talk about. Now I would like to talk about grids, guides, and rulers. Every time we start a new project, doesn't matter what we are going to do, we always have to work with grids and guides as a way to make our lives a little bit easier and to be able to give us precision. Okay, so for example, if I go to web and work, I don't know, with web large. So let's suppose that, again, let's try to work with the same size. It's a square, okay? And let's work, doesn't matter if we work with artboards or not. So let's create. And after we create this file, you can work with, first of all, activating rulers. If you go to Window and actually View, Rulers, okay? This is the first thing. And here you will see that you have View, you have new guide layout, new guides from shape, okay? And this is kind of important because you also have the possibilities to snap to the guides, to the grids, to layers, and so on, or to absolutely nothing, okay? If you work with any type of a layout, you have to be aware that usually we distribute our content into grids, and grids are extremely important to keep the rhythm, to keep the readability, and to keep the flow of the information. Okay, so in this case, the way to draw new guides to work is just clicking and dragging from your rulers like so. If you click and drag, you are going to create guides. So if I click and drag from my vertical, I'm going to create a vertical guide. If I click and drag from my horizontal ruler, I'm going to create a horizontal guide. Okay, and the advantage of this kind of thing is if you create any type of shape, for example, like so. Let me take the stroke of this guy. So there's just the fill. If you create something, anything, text, shapes, photos, whatever, you just have to click and drag. If you click and drag, you're going to bring this guy to close, and then boom, they will snap to your layout. And this is exactly what I expect. And if you go closer, up to the point where you can see the pixels, you can kind of connect those guys, okay? And they're going to snap, so you can have some sort of precision. But right now, something else is going on here, okay? It's not only the guides, the objects they are snapping. Also, if you go to View, Snap to, you will see that it's also snapping to the grid, okay? So how to work with grids and how to set those grids, right? So if you go to Edit, Preferences, you will see here that we have guides, grids, and slices. And the settings for those things are more related to what is going on here. So for example, right now, my grid line is every 2 centimeters. But if I'm working for web, which by the way is the case, I should work with pixels, not centimeters, right? And we have divisions. And if you click OK, you will see that now the snap is similar, but it's not exactly the same what I have, okay? If you click and drag on your guides, the guides are going to snap to the object, and the object is snapping to the grid. So it's a consequence. So for example, the guides, they usually run free, okay? They're not exactly obeying the grid, but at the end, everything obeys to the grid because the grid is the most fundamental thing. And right now, my grid is set to work on a pixel basis. Okay, if I move this guy here, I can connect to every single pixel if I decided to connect also my grids to a pixel guide. If you one second, if you double click on top of your guides, you will see that we have guides here, and we have the colors of the guides, and we have also something called smart guides. Okay, this smart guides is something that happens when we not necessarily create the guides by ourselves. So this happens when we have like objects being aligned to other objects. Like, for example, let me take this guy here. When I try to reduce the size, as you can see, and I try to alt, click and drag, as you can see, the purple lines, they are the guides. Okay, so the purple lines and the things that are happening here on your screen, they mean exactly that. So the purple lines, they are smart guides, and they will help you to better align objects. So for example, this is like 36 pixels from the center of the previous one. Now I'm going to take and do the same thing. Alt, click and drag. If you hold Shift, you will notice that this guy just runs horizontally. But if you go close, 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 you will see that now I can repeat the same 36 pixels from one object to the other objects. And this is super cool because it's a way to keep objects very well aligned without having to worry about anything else. Okay, and if you take those guys, you can align, of course, to your grids. And that is also another way to work with grids if you don't want to work with like that. By the way, if you want to delete grids, guides, sorry, you just have to click and drag and drop on top of your ruler like so. So just click and drag and release on top of your ruler. If you want to create entire layouts based on grids, you just have to go to View, New, Guide Layout. If you click on New Guide, you have the same option that we had a few seconds ago. You can create horizontal guides or vertical guides. It's exactly the same thing of clicking and dragging from your rulers. Okay, so in this case, if I click vertical, he's going to create a vertical guide on 0. 0 is exactly this point here. Actually, this is 0, as you can see on your ruler, 0, and on the other side, 0. Okay, if you go to the end, you will have like 1080 and 1080. If you want to put like another guide, a guide here, you have to make some basic math. So for example, let's go again, new guide. I want a vertical guide, so in this case, 1080. And then when you click OK, he's going to create on the other side. Oh, perfect. But this is not exactly what I want. Okay, so let's suppose that you want something more like 10 pixels from here to here, from top to bottom, from right to left, and so on. You just have to take the width and make some basic math. So for example, all the guys, they always start with this point, okay? From this point, from 0, 0, right? So horizontally is like 10 pixels. You just have to put 10 and he's going to create the guide over there. So View, New Guide. Okay, I want, 10 pixels, right? Just hit OK, and now I have 10 pixels. Of course, this is not enough. So View, New Guides, let's try 50 pixels. Oh, this is a very good one. 50 pixels. If I want to put like another guide here, you just have to take the total width and subtract 50 and you will have the thing here. Or another way to do that, a very fast way to do that, it's my personal trick. I do that all the time because sometimes I'm lazy to do math. You just have to resize this small guy here to have 50 pixels, right? So if you right mouse button here and click pixel, pixel, you can uncheck this guy if the thing is not exactly a square, and put 50 and 50. If this guy have 50 pixels, you just have to put him on the corner. If you are not sure, if you are really aligning this guy on the corner, what you can do is Control A to select everything, which is this guy here. Control A, I selected all the pixels, but I am selecting this layer, right? And I can align left, top, Control D. Now I can click and drag with Alt to make a copy of this guy. Control A again, align to right and bottom. Now I just have to draw guides. Draw the first guide to align to this guy. Oh, by the way, the objects have to be selected, otherwise the guide is not going to work. Okay, so you can go close. You don't have to be extremely close, and then boom, you just have to snap. Okay, and you can do the same thing to the other side, and then you have perfect guides. Oh, again, select the object, right? Otherwise, the snap is not going to work. The snap works on a layer basis. So you have to be on that layer to be able to use the guides to snap. And now you have exactly a perfect margin guide from the sides, okay? And you can put your objects inside, respecting this small margin. This is super cool to work with texts as well. We are going to talk about texts, but let's suppose that you want to create a new layout. So you can go to View. You have this option to work with like new grid layouts, and you have a lot of presets like 8 columns. You have 12 columns, and you have 16 columns, and you have 24 columns, and they are usually evenly spaced. So let's go back a little bit. Let's delete those guides here, because they are going to be on our way. This create layout, by the way, works considering the total width and height of our grid. So go to new guide layout, and here as you can see, he divides the page into columns. And if you don't want this gutter, by the way, is the spacing between the guides, you just have to put 0 here, and as you can see, everything is divided into quadrants to you. If you want, you can work with just one artboard or more than one. If you want roles as well, you can create as much as you can, okay? You just have to put your cursor here on top of this guy, and you just have to hit up and down arrows on your keyboard. And if you do that, you can reduce the gutter to 0, and you can create like a grid, okay? And this is another way to work. If you are not sure about which one you should use, you just have to be aware that since this is a square, you can work with the same number on one side and another side, and now you have a lot of guides. I don't like to work with this amount of guides. I think this is a little bit too much, okay? But you can do pretty much as you like, okay? Just keep in mind that working with guides can give you a very consistent layout when you take things far from the margin, when you align things, when you work with this kind of thing. Okay, let's talk about typography inside Photoshop. It's not complicated at all. Actually, you have horizontal and vertical type 2. The difference between them are pretty self-explanatory. I never use the other options. I just use horizontal type 2. And eventually when I want to do something like this, I use this tool, like vertical type 2. I'm going to start with this one just to demonstrate what is the result. And this is basically what we have, okay? It's pretty much a way to position the text on a literally vertical way. As you can see, when you hover your mouse over the text, you will see that your mouse is horizontal, okay? Your cursor. So in this case, this is the only difference between both types of texts, okay? But the same rule applies to both of them. So for example, when you create a text, a layer text, You have some options here on properties, but there is specifically two windows to work with text. One is the character, and the other one is paragraph. So as you can see, if you try to use the character editor here, the character window, you will see that you have way more options than you have here on the properties panel, but you also have like a very objective way to just edit pretty much everything here. But some things they are hidden, you know. There's a lot of settings, there's a lot of things, and I don't want to talk about those things here inside Photoshop, because Photoshop is not exactly the best software to work with typography. But I would like to focus on the most important things. So for example, here on character, you have things like the type of font. So you can select the width of the font, and you can select the size, the line space, and pretty much all the basic settings that you have on any text editor. And on paragraph, you have things like the alignment of the paragraph. You have this small margin between the beginning of the block of text and the text itself, and so on. So you have a lot of other options. Like for example, if you work on a very large text, you can use hyphenate. Hyphenate is a way to separate words like lorem, ip. So for example, you can put something like ip dash soon on the other line. So if you use hyphenate, you can have this type of thing. But that's the problem. Right now, you're not going to see this kind of thing, because Photoshop have basically two types of text. Okay, let me delete those and start all over again. The basic form of text inside Photoshop is called point text. Point text is pretty basic. Like 90% of the times when I work inside Photoshop, I work with point text. So you just have to click and then type the text. And if you're going to go to the next line, you just have to go enter and then do that, enter and then do that. So that's basically what is a point text. Okay, but you have another way to work with text. You just have to select the text tool, click and drag. If you click and drag, looks like that you are doing a selection, but this is not a regular selection like you know, the other tools. You are going to create a paragraph. Okay, and what you are seeing here, this weird text inside is loading into whatever. This is a text replacement, and the main difference between those, as you can see, they have like exactly the same icon, exactly the same visual description, but this guy can be distorted in the sense of, if you go there and hit like not this one, that was the first one. So if you hit Control T, you can literally create this type of thing, which by the way is horrible. Never do this kind of thing. Okay, but in this case here is a little bit different, because if you hit Control T, you are not going to you are going to deform the text, of course, because you know it's a deformation. We are applying a deformation. But if you double click on the text, you also have those handles around, and you can literally change, you know, in squeeze text, and you have other options to work with text. Okay, and as you can see here on the corner, you have this option here. If you click here, you see that you can open up a little bit more to make everything fits inside this box. And when you fit everything, that plus on at the bottom, he just vanished. So for example, let me retreat this thing again, and as you can see, it's showing this plus thing. So that means that you have more text than you are seeing, and the text box, it kind of crops the text. So this is a very cool way to work with paragraphs. If you have paragraphs, instead of working with point text, which is this guy here, like hitting enter, you can work with paragraphs because you have way more control over the layout. Okay, so my suggestion for you is try to work with paragraphs for longer texts and with point text with smaller text. But if you want to change between both, so for example, this guy here is the paragraph, right? You just have to go to type and use the option convert to point text. If you do that, this text now behaves like a point text. As you can see, we don't have the box around. And now if you want to change alignments or whatever, you have to go literally inside the text and do that by hand. Okay, so that's I suggested you to use paragraph texts for things that are, you know, usually bigger. So if you want to transform this guy back again to paragraph text, you just have to go to type and then convert to paragraph text. Another thing that we can do with text inside Photoshop without, you know, a lot of trouble is to deform the text. So for example, if you go to type and use warp text, this is one way to deform text, and you have a lot of different warps here. And let me say this again. You can apply those effects and they're going to work pretty well. You have the settings here. It's pretty much straightforward. But inside Illustrator, we have way more possibilities and we have way more flexibility to deal with text than inside Photoshop. As I said, Photoshop is not exactly the best way to do that, but if you want to recreate the classic designs that you can see pretty much everywhere from the flyers and folders and posters from the 60s, you can try to recreate using those warp text, which by the way is something that is inside Photoshop since the beginning, but they are pretty basic. So you have a bunch of settings and you just have to adjust the settings to achieve results. Okay, sometimes this is very useful. Sometimes you can combine this thing with other types of distortion. So for example, if you go to edit, transform and use warp, you can literally take those points here and you can edit those points and you can achieve better results and you can achieve better types of deformations because you have different ways to deform, and now you have at least the settings to interactively see what is going on. So for example, if you want to put a text on a can or on a cylindrical object, this is probably a very interesting way to achieve a believable result using the bold option. Or if you want to put text on a very on a shirt or something that have a lot of wrinkles, you can try to do this kind of thing. Another thing you can do is you can transform text into a bitmap. So for example, you just have to right mouse button and you have the option of rasterize type, because otherwise if you do not rasterize, and this is important, if you go to filters and liquify, for example, Photoshop is going to suggest you to do two things. You can transform this guy into a smart object or rasterize the layer. Sorry. The basic difference between both is if you use a smart object, you will have access to this text in the future. So for example, it's exactly the same thing of right mouse button and then convert to smart object, and this guy is going to be inside a container, and you can apply pretty much all the filters you want to apply. Okay, so in this case, this is one thing. If you double click on this guy, you can open up just the Photoshop layer and you have access to the text. Okay, this can be a good thing if you, for example, want to try different things in the future and you want to copy the text or parts of the text instead of typing everything from zero. Okay, it's a very interesting way to work. But let's undo this thing. If you want to rasterize this layer, if you rasterize, you are going to create a image. It's literally a image, and this layer is going to become a bunch of pixels, and you don't have any possible way to edit this layer anymore, unless of course you plan to do other things like apply effect or whatever. Okay, so this is the only difference between those things. And if you want to apply a filter, any type of filter, Photoshop is always going to ask if you want to rasterize or do whatever you want with this text. And after that you can liquify, for example. He's going to ask if you want to create a smart object or rasterize. I always prefer to use smart object. So in this case, you can literally deform this text using this tool here. I'm using the bracket, open bracket, close bracket on my keyboard to make it bigger or smaller, and you can literally deform this guy and do a lot of things. So after you finish, you click OK, and you will see that this is a smart filter because this thing was applied on a smart layer and the smart object. If you double click, you can go inside and you can see that your text is there. Okay, so always try to think about this type of workflow when you work with text. Okay, one last thing I would like to show you is a new feature inside Photoshop that allows you to identify fonts and help you to match certain fonts. So I went to the internet and I found this beautiful French cafe photo, Le Bon Georges, and I would like to match the typography, any type of typography. So the way to do that is going to text, match font, and he's going to ask you to kind of select the area. You just have to select the area that you want to match. So this is the area. Let me see. Yeah, something like this. You don't have to include a lot of things. And Photoshop is going to try to find similar typography from top to bottom, the most compatible ones and less compatible ones. As you can see, all of those typography, they belong to Adobe. So if you click here on this small thing, Adobe is going to activate this typography for you. So the name of this guy is Rig Solid, I think so. And you just have to click OK. So if you want to type now, you just have to go to your type, and your Rig Solid is already selected. And you just have to Le Bon. It's not exactly the same thing. You have to consider that. So let's double click on the font. By the way, if you double click on your layer, I already said that you can select the color. This is one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is if you go to your layer, you can use, for example, the color overlay. And on this color overlay is another thing is another way to apply, for example, a overlay color on top of the original one. So as you can see, it kind of reminds, it's not the same thing, but you can see that, okay, this is the bold inline version. You can try to deform this typography as well to kind of match the design of the the thing you want to reproduce. It's not going to be perfect. So I would like to show you a website that I use in the past, and I still use because I think it's way better than this feature inside Photoshop, because Photoshop is going to give you all the typography that belongs to Adobe. Okay, so let's see. Here we are on a website called My Fonts. And My Fonts is a place to buy professional typography, and I used to buy typography a lot in the past to develop the works for my clients, and sometimes they require a very specific professional typography, and this is one of my favorite websites to do that. And they have this service called What the Font, and you just have to upload a image. Sometimes I do a treatment of this image. I try to take out of the colors, you know, I do like a black and white version with the best contrast I can. And you just have to upload here and then advance, and this website is going to ask you to recognize the letters from this image. And when you do that, the result is a bunch of typography that is very, very close to the one you uploaded, if not the same, because this database sells typography from literally all the best creators in the world, and there's a lot of classic things and there's a lot of very modern things, so you are covered if you want to use this service, and it's totally free. Of course, as soon as you identify the fonts, you can go there and you can buy the typography and you can use on your work. So I usually use this service to identify the typography I need to use on my works. Another thing I would like to talk about is how to create slices. Slices are a very simple concept. We used this concept in the past when we wanted to literally create web layouts and we want to separate parts of this layout. So for example, the buttons, the menus, the logo, and so on. Okay, and the way this thing works is you have to go here, and that is this crop tool. The crop tool is the one that you usually see when you go to this menu. And if you click and hold, you see that with the crop tool, which by the way is used to make your whole image bigger or smaller, you can go to the slice tool. Okay, and inside the slice tool, the only thing you have to do is click and drag. And if you click and drag, you will create a slice. But at the same time, let's go close to this guy. Let's hide this layer underneath. You see that I have the brown line or a golden line here. And this golden line means that this image is going to be generated. This slice here is going to be generated. And I can make it bigger, I can make it smaller, I can change things, but at the same time you have to be aware that when I create this slice, Photoshop is going to create this image separate from the other images, and he's going to cut everything around this image, because this image to work it requires always rectangles. Okay, so if you want to change the information, so for example the name of the layer, you just have to go here. You have this slide select. Slide select is a way to select slices. Now I just have one slice. And if you click here, you're going to show or hide the other slices that is going to be generated automatically. But this guy here, if you double click on this guy, you will see that I can select, for example, the type of slice that I'm going to generate. So this here can be no image, or a table. Okay. And white table is kind of weird, right? So this is from the time when everything that we created, you know, website related, they were based on tables. I'm talking about the 90s, on the beginning of the internet, into the beginning of the 2000s. And I started working with web development in 98, 99. I can't remember. It was a long ago. Back then, I was a designer. I used to create interfaces, but I also had to learn about HTML and CSS and this kind of thing to make my work a little bit better. But in this case here, table is going to generate the HTML. It's going to ignore the image. No image means literally no image on these areas if you want, or in this area. So in this case, I want to generate, of course, a image, and the name of this image can be the name you gave. So for example, I want to put Café Le Bon Georges logo, for example, and I hit OK. And then when I export this guy, this image with this size is going to be generated with the settings I gave, okay? And at the same time, Photoshop is going to export the other slices. If you want, you can double click on the other slices. Just double click on this small thing here, and you can put different numbers, but usually Photoshop is going to give unique names. Sometimes he takes like the name of the file, usually it's the name of the file, and he puts this underline 01, 02, 03, and so on, unless you want another name. So in this case here, I put Café Le Bon Georges logo, and when I export this thing, this name is going to prevail. So you don't have to worry about that at all, but you just have to keep in mind that usually Photoshop, when you work with slices, takes the name of the file as a base. Talking about export, that is several different ways to export things from Photoshop. So right now I have a very simple layer here. If you want to export this entire image, one way to do that is going to File, Export, and you have at least two options here. The first one is Quick Export as PNG. Photoshop is just going to open up the options, showing you the places you can save this guy, and he's going to suggest you a name, and you just have to click Save, and then you will have this image as PNG. That's it. You don't have any other option to define anything. But if you want a little bit of control over the way Photoshop exports things, you can go to File, Export, and Export As. This is the new way of exporting things, and you have even export preferences. If you go to export preferences like I did right now, you are going to see that Photoshop can give you a bunch of options. So first of all, by default, he's going to export as PNG. PNG is usually better than JPEG. JPEGs are meant to be used for photos, but PNG have a lot of compression, but also have transparency. So if you choose JPEG do not have transparency at all. So PNG, they have transparency. So when you create like logos and graphical elements for websites or for movies or whatever, we usually work with PNG because it's the best trade-off between quality and compression, okay? This is, you don't have to change anything here, by the way. I'm just showing you the settings, but if you go to File, Export, Export As, you are going to see this beautiful window here. And this is super cool. So first of all, the size of the preview here, you can put like 100, and everything you do, like, you know, when you change the settings here, when you do something here, you will see the results here. So it's like a preview, and you have chew up. Chew up means this is one of the settings and this is another setting, okay? And you can see the size, you can see before and after, and you can compare different types of optimization. So for example, if you want to export this as JPEG, you can see that is a difference of the final size of the image, because as I said, PNG is better in the sense of quality, but it's also going to give you a huge size, okay? And if you have a PNG and you just have to, you know, to have the image, it's better to work with JPEG, no questions, okay? But you also have quality here. So for example, if you export a very, very poor quality, let's suppose that you want this image here just to put on a background. So by the way, if you amplify the image, you will see clearly the difference of quality in parts like, for example, the legs here. As you can see, the very poor is going to give you a bunch of artifacts. We call this thing artifacts. It's the poor representation of the pixels when we go very low on quality, and this tends to be a little bit risky when you work on professional work, so you have to be aware of that. And you can increase, like fair for example, right away the quality goes up and up or goes down, and you can see the results. But again, if you just need this image to put on a background and this image is like black and white and so on, you don't have necessarily to go crazy on the quality. You can, spare a few kilobytes, just decreasing the quality. But even if you go to the quality like great, you will see that the size of this image, the original one, 2 megabytes and 1.1 megabytes on the best quality JPEG, does a pretty decent job. There's no, visual or perceptive loss, but at the same time, you can see that the size is smaller. So that's why I recommend you to work with JPEGs with when it comes to photos. Okay, so this is a very good way to work exporting, but you can also have things like, for example, when you work with graphical elements, you can export these graphical elements with different sizes. So, for example, when we work with logos, you can export this logo with the original size and 2 or 3 times bigger. Why one can would like to do that? It's very simple. You can have like the original size and you can have a bigger size, and you can trigger this bigger size when you have like iPads, because iPads have this display retina, and you can see a lot of quality. And if you have the original size, sometimes you can notice the pixels. And if you export 2 times bigger this graphic element or this logo on iPad, you can trigger this guy on your website using CSS or some very simple JavaScript, and you can see a better version of your images right away. Okay, and if you export the original version, no suffix. When you export 2 times bigger version, you will have this at 2x as a suffix on the beginning of the file. Okay, this is a very flexible and powerful way to work with exporting images, but it's not all. We have one thing last to discuss, which is slices. Okay, if you want to export slices, you cannot do that just going to File, Export as PNG or Export as. You have to use the old approach to export things, which by the way is the Save for Web and Legacy. Okay, let me remind you once again, here we are just talking about how to export images and slices. Photoshop is capable of exporting a lot of other things. Okay, just keep that in mind. Here we have like something similar. You have the original file, and we have this option called slice selection tool. Okay, and this slice selection tool, which by the way is the same tool that you saw over there, allows you to say to Photoshop that you want to save this slice here as PNG 24. Let's suppose this guy here is going to be JPEG, and yeah, the rest of the things can be JPEGs, but this one, oh by the way, the zoom is here, so I just trying to frame everything on my screen. And you can even change some settings here if you want, for this specific image, and you can see the same optimized thing here. So for example, if you work with PNG, you can see the final results, and if you don't want to export at all, you just have to ignore or delete the other parts later on. And if you are satisfied with the results, you just have to click save. I'm going to do that because I would like to show you the final result. I'm saving this thing on desktop, and if you want to save this guy, you have a few options here. So format, you have HTML and images. By the way, if you go, let me go to my downloads folder, and inside this download folder, I can create a new folder if I want. I'm just going to save straight to that thing. You can save HTML and images. You can save images only. He's going to save just the images. Or let me save slices. So when I export using the save slices, this is basically the final result of what Photoshop saved for me. And here, as you can see, I have JPEGs everywhere, and I have this PNG because I defined that this slice with the logo would be a PNG on the Save for Web Legacy option. Now I want to talk about a small challenge that I prepared for you, okay? This challenge is to create a beautiful Instagram carousel post. So carousels are a very interesting way to show content, and I don't use Instagram very much, but still a very interesting way to tell stories, because you can engage the audience to see the post just swiping, to left. And this is a very cool way to convey messages. Okay, and there is a lot of engagement, and there is a lot of very cool things about this type of narrative. So the challenge is, you have to choose one of the three ideas, okay? How to make something, or list of 5 things, or explaining whatever, okay? So those 3 basic ideas, you can choose one of those 3, and you can develop your Instagram carousel post. Okay, of course there's some rules, but before talking about the rules, I would like to explain a little bit better and give you some examples. Keep in mind, those are just examples. Okay, you can do pretty much you want. I really don't care about the content, I care about the design. Okay, this is not a course about content. It's a course about design, but I really expect to see great and incredible things, and I'm pretty sure that I'm going to see those, because most of you know how to use Instagram already, and I'm going to explain now, giving you some examples. So first of all, you can try, for example, how to make a cake, or how to get rich, or how to make your dreams come true, or you can be crazy with this idea. I really don't care. Okay, if you have some talents besides, of course, the design talents or the skills that you already know, you already have, of course, you can put those things on this exercise. I really don't care, again, about the content. Okay, I care about the design, and of course there's some rules to get there. So for example, lists, 5 things to do in Vienna, 5 books I like the most, 5 things to do before I die. I don't care. Okay, explaining animes, explaining social anxiety, you can do beautiful things. Okay, one very cool reference for this kind of work. Okay, there is a very interesting type of design called infographic. Okay, infographics are a super old idea. They've been around for centuries, and it's something that designers, they usually do when they want to explain concepts or even complex concepts. Okay, just look for this type of thing. Look for infographics. It's usually a condensed data into a smaller space, and I think it's a very interesting way to approach design, narrative, and content. Okay, let's talk about the rules. So first of all, I would like to see some continuity and connection between the slides. Okay, you are going to create independent slides. In this image, you can see what I mean. Since this is a social network post, you should think about the amount of content, the amount of text you are showing to the audience. Okay, social networks are usually known by the fact that people don't spend a lot of time reading posts. Okay, and you want a very fast reaction, so bigger texts, very compressed information, very fast things to read. So please don't spend a lot of time creating big text because people are not going to read that. Okay, you have to be very precise, very objective, and use bigger text because this is for a mobile phone. Okay, so I would like to see some elements linking from one slide to another, like this phone here on this image. Okay, you can use photos or illustrations. I don't care. What I care is you have to work with color harmony and contrast. If you don't know what I mean, you have to apply the concept of complementary colors. If you never heard about that, no problem. Just ask me during the week or do your research. You are going to learn about this thing on Design Fundamentals. I'm pretty sure about that. But you can use this thing to increase the contrast of the elements on your scene, on every slide. Okay. Another very, very important thing. Okay. You can use at a maximum 3 colors between graphical elements and text, and 2 colors, duotone or black and white for photos. Okay. If you have no idea what is duotone, I'm going to show you in a second. Okay, I want to see some consistency in typography. I don't want to see like different typography, like 5-7 fonts. Please do not use Comic Sans. Thank you very much. I would like to see some beautiful typography, and you have different ways to do that. If you don't have Adobe subscription, if you have Adobe subscription, you have access to a lot of typography from Adobe. If you don't want to use, you can go to Google Fonts and you can do your work using Google Fonts. It's pretty much okay. Okay, but be careful with the typography you use. I don't want to see crazy things. I don't want to see imbalanced typography. I don't want to see incompatible typography, and I don't want to see more than 2 type fonts being used. The main message should be consistent. Okay, so be careful with that. And this is again Design Fundamentals. You need to create at least 5 slides. So think about a story that you can span between 5 slides. Okay, the maximum is 10. You can create the minimum of 5, maximum 10. Okay, the size of each slide is 1080 by 1080 is a square size. And no, there is no way to create something different than this. Please keep this size as a reference. Okay. This, by the way, is the thing I imagined that you are going to create. There is a continuity between the posts, and you slide to see this story going on. Okay, that's why I would like to see this continuity between the slides, because it's a way to engage the audience and make them kind of curious to go to the next one and so on. So try to think about that. What the heck is duotone? I talk about duotone, and if you don't know what is duotone, I'm going to show you some examples, and you pretty much know this thing already. So this is duotone. I think you already saw this thing on Spotify. Okay, it's a very simple way to work with photos instead of just using black and white. Okay, this is duotone, and this is duotone. Actually, 4 different duotones. Duotone is usually done combining 2 colors of photos, 2 colors and the variations of those 2 colors, the shades of those 2 colors, but not more than 2 colors. Okay, that's why duo, 2 colors. Okay, I would like to show you how to set up this Photoshop file to create this seamless posts. And with this knowledge, you will be able to start your assignments. Okay? Okay, here we are back into Photoshop, and I would like to show you this layout here. As you can see, we have the same size, right? 1080 is exactly the size I suggest you to create your suggestion. I'll ask you to create your design. Okay, but that's the thing. If you want to work with artboards, and this is this is one of the cases where working with artboards seems a good idea, because you have literally different slides, and you just have to create your slides like inside one of the artboards. And even if you put the artboard side by side, it's kind of easier to export. Go to File, Export, and you have this option here, Artboards, to File. And if you use this option, you are going to export all the artboards to, for example, PNG. I don't know. It seems a good idea, but at the same time, it's not a good idea, because you will not be able to create continuity between the slides. This is going to be very, very hard for you. So for example, let's bring this file, place embedded. I am inside my slide one, by the way. I'm going to bring this image here, and I'm placing embedded. Okay, we can put this guy on top of the stack here. If I try to rescale, I'm holding Shift to be able to scale proportionally. As you can see, when I go close to the border, the artboard clips the content and do not allow this photo to go to the other side. So I'll never be able to create something that allows me to have like multiple photos spanning across the slides. And one can say, okay, I can kind of lie. I can bring this photo. I can copy the photo, right? Like so. I'm just creating a copy. It's taking some time. And let me close the color and the properties just to have a little bit of space here. If I go take this copy here and click and drag and put on slide 2, okay? I can try to lie. I can try to match both photos and see if I can kind of put them together, but it's still not the same thing, okay? This could be one way to do that, but you will never be able to perfectly see what's going on. And if you decide to change this photo here for any reason, the other photo is not going to be updated automatically. Okay, of course you can try to, let me see, you can try to select both layers here, right click, and you can try to link layers. That could be a possibility, because if you link layers, when you try to scale one layer, you can scale the other layer, as you can see here, and I'm still using 2 different artboards. So this can be one way to do these assignments. If you want to use artboards, this can be a good way. But if you don't want to use artboards, I'm going to give you another option. So first of all, let's close this guy. File, not open, file, new. And I'm going to web, and I'm going to take this guy here. Is already have the width and the height. And you don't have to work with artboards, not on this case, okay? Because in this case, I'm creating 1. Okay, if you want to make like 5 slides, which by the way was what I suggested, you have to take this number here and multiply by 5, which we are going to do now. Here I am with my calculator. I just have to take this guy, so 1080 times 5. Let's suppose that you want to create 5 slides, right? Click OK, and you have this number here. So this number 5400 5400. This is going to be the width, and you have to create. Okay, and you will have like this huge canvas, and now we have to define guides, right? And to do that, you can go to views, new grading guides, and you can divide this thing here into columns. I'm not using rows, just columns, into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 guides, and those guides, they are going to have exactly the size you want, exactly the size you need. So for example, if you go here to here, okay, I'm a little bit far off, and you will see that you have exactly, there's of course 1 pixel of difference. You just have to go close and match this size, but the thing have like the same width and height, it's perfectly divided. Okay, so this is the way to do that. Of course you don't need that. If you want like the same background, you can have the same background. And the last time I would like to show you is when you work with guides, I probably forgot to mention that if you go to view, you have to lock your guides. Otherwise, if you do not lock your guides, you will move, or you might move the guide, not in purpose, of course, but sometimes we are working, and this is perfectly normal. Okay, so just think about that. It's very important to lock the guides, and now you can create your thing. So for example, if you go to File and Place and Embedded, let's bring the cafe here. It's a very smaller photo. Let's bring this guy. I just want to show you a way to work with also slices, sorry. Because when you create your slides here, you have to export individual slices. If you try to use File, Export, and Export As, you will see that you are going to export like a huge background, like the entire image. I don't want that. What I want actually is to export individual slices. That's why using slices is so great, because you just have to go here, click and drag, and from here to there, and from here, and from here again. I'm showing you this huge image on the background. You don't have to use a huge image. I'm just pointing that this is an example, okay? And now, when you finish your design, you can work freely. If those things are bothering you, you can take the slice tool, and you can also use slices from guides. And this is another way to create slices. If you have the guides already defined, like we define it, you don't even have to use this thing. I usually create my slices, I usually define my things, but you don't have to do that, okay? So in this case, if you want to export this image, you just have to go to File, Export. Try to remember that you're not going to use export as PNG or export as. In this case, you have to use Save for Web Legacy. Because if you use Save for Web Legacy, this guy is going to recognize that you are working with slices, and he's going to respect the slices, and you just have to define the slices as PNG, okay? We usually work with PNG 24 just to maintain the quality. Sometimes it takes some time to load, okay? I am going to define, let me reduce this thing. So I defined this guy, and this guy as PNG. All of them should be PNG, by the way. Just keep that in mind. When we change the format, he also takes some time to process. Keep in mind that I am saving a photo as PNG. You don't have to use, let me select everything. You don't have to use transparency. When I select all the slices, I can do the same operation on all the slices at the same time, okay? I don't have to use transparency because there's nothing transparent on these images. And I just have to save as PNG24 and then click save. And on the next screen, I just have to export Insta. I just have to say, ignore this name, okay? Because he's taking this name, untitled, because of the name of the file, and the name of the file have absolutely nothing. So untitled here, untitled here. Just ignore this thing, okay? I'm saving just the images. I don't care about the HTML, and I just have to save. When you do that, let's look inside the folder, the final result. So after I exported my images, this is the final result. I'm going to open up just one of them. They are absolutely equal, okay? I'm just want to show you some details of one of those. If you open up this image, for example, you will see that this image, go to file information, you will see that this image have the size we want, have a good quality, okay? And you just have to upload this image as one of the slides of your carousel, okay? Try to remember that. If this thing have a sequence, which by the way have a sequence here, let me see if I can open up all of them. As you can see, this thing have a sequence. So try to maintain the sequence when you upload, and when you slide, you will see a continuity between the slides. To be even more clear, I would like to show you some posts to explain what I mean. So this is the original carousel post from Instagram when they reveal this idea to the world. So you just have to click to see the next one. So you can tell stories doing this kind of thing. So you can put videos and images up to 10 items, okay? This is another one, and this is what I mean by continuity. So when you click here, you see the next slide. Chipotle, this is super cool. It's a story, so it starts. I'm gonna save the rest for later, just a few more bytes. And then this isn't enough to save. Yeah, pregnant. It's a funny story, of course, but at the end you can see it's possible to tell a story. So in this case, 3 slides, and they have like a perfect seamless continuity between the slides, and this is what I want, okay? This is an example of how to whatever. So how to draw a teddy bear, and we start showing the process slide by slide. There is no items, by the way, leaking from one post to another. So I'm just showing you the how to do whatever content if you want to do something similar. But of course, I have a great expectation to see like beautiful designs and this kind of thing. Okay, just to keep in mind that this is kind of a tutorial. Okay, and this is a infographic. Okay, and that is a lot of data leaking from one post, one slide to another, and they work a lot of information, numbers. Graphic elements, and sometimes this goes from one frame to another. Okay, sometimes, not all the time, just I think one time. This 4 billion, since the thing is huge, right? They can go to the other slides, but anyway, I don't like this design. This is extremely simple. You can do better than this. Okay, so keep in mind that this is the assignment. I would like you to work on this, and this is for your portfolio, and be creative to do this thing and to show this thing, on your portfolio. Thank you very much. Bye bye.